I used to believe that life was a straight line, simple, predictable, honoring the rules you think will protect you. But all it takes is a single moment, one phone call, for that line to twist into something unrecognizable. Mine happened on an ordinary weekday morning, the kind where sunlight slips lazily through half-closed blinds and the world feels calm enough to trust. I should have known better. Calm like that is always borrowed. My wife had been fighting her illness since just after our son was born. A gradual decline, first fatigue, then pain, then the quiet dread that settles in when doctors begin speaking softly, carefully, as if volume alone could shatter the fragile hope holding us together. When they finally said she needed a kidney transplant, something inside me sank. We went through her family one by one. Her parents, her cousins, relatives who live states away. No matches, no viable donors. Every conversation ended in apologies whispered through hospital hallways. So I did the only thing a husband can do. I stepped forward. I knew the chances were slim. I told myself I was preparing for disappointment, but hope has a way of living inside you, even when you pretend it doesn't. The call came 3 days after I took the test. The voice on the other end sounded rehearsed, calm the way a person becomes when they've had to deliver complicated news more times than anyone should. He told me I was a match. I felt the air return to my lungs. I pictured my wife smiling again, laughing without wincing, chasing our kids across the living room floor like she used to. But then his voice shifted, softened, not with relief but with caution. "There's something unusual," he said. "We'd like to run additional testing." My stomach tightened. Unusual. The kind of word that means nothing yet suggests everything. I agreed. What else could I have done? We needed answers, and I wanted to give my wife her life back. I didn't expect a second call. I didn't expect the doctor's voice to sound even more prepared than before, as if he had practiced the conversation. I didn't expect my own name to suddenly feel foreign, like it belonged to someone else. But that's what happens when a truth you never imagined becomes the one thing you can't escape. He explained the results gently, carefully, but no amount of caution could soften the impact. He told me the match percentage was unusually high, higher than what's typical even for siblings. He walked me through genetic markers, shared DNA segments, inheritance patterns that blurred the lines between science and fate. Then he said the words that fractured the world around me. "You and your wife, you're biologically related." For a moment, I thought the room was tilting. I felt weightless, like someone had pulled the ground out from beneath me. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. Only a strange buzzing in my ears as my mind replayed every memory of us. Meeting her by chance, her smile, her voice, the way we fell into each other's lives as if the universe had nudged us together. And now I was being told that the universe had played a different game entirely. I knew I was adopted. My parents never hid that from me. They told me I was chosen, loved from the moment they carried me out of a hospital room minutes after I was born. It was a closed adoption. No names, no histories, no lingering connections. Growing up, I never felt the need to search for my biological family. My parents were enough. My family was enough. I never thought that the past I ignored would one day walk directly into my present. I asked the doctor how this was possible. He explained the numbers again, the matching patterns, the likelihoods. He said it could mean we were half siblings, or first cousins, or that one of my biological parents could be one of hers. Each possibility was a strike of lightning, sharp, blinding, impossible to make sense of. After the call ended, I sat alone in my car for a long time. The hospital parking lot buzzed quietly with people living ordinary days, unaware that my life had split cleanly into a before and an after. The world kept moving as if nothing had changed, while I sat there realizing everything had. I didn't tell my wife. I couldn't. Not then. She was weak, exhausted, fighting every day just to stay strong for our children. How could I add this to her burden? How could I take away the hope the transplant represented? I drove home in a daze. My daughter ran to me with her usual excitement, her laugh echoing through the house. My son barreled after her, wild and healthy, a force of nature. I stared at them, seeing them the way I always had, my children, full of life and possibility. but the doctor's words ran beneath everything like an undercurrent. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, I called my parents. I told them I needed to know everything, every detail about my adoption, even the things they'd once believed would never matter. They told me what they could, that my biological mother was 16, that the father was absent, that it all happened in a hospital not far from where my wife was born, that the adoption was closed so tightly no identifying information ever slipped through. Just fragments. Enough to make the truth possible, not enough to confirm it. My parents apologized, not because they had done anything wrong, but because they could hear something breaking in me. I assured them it wasn't their fault. How could it be? None of this was anyone's fault, but innocence doesn't make confusion any easier to bear. For the next few days, I moved through life like a man rehearsing normalcy. I took my daughter to school, I fed my son breakfast, I helped my wife to the couch when she felt too weak to walk alone. I kept telling myself I needed to focus on the surgery, on saving her life. Everything else could wait. But every time I looked at her father, memories resurfaced. The moment my parents had first commented that my son looked like him. How we'd laughed it off, how I'd never thought twice about it. Now I couldn't stop thinking about it. The doctor recommended further testing to narrow possibilities, and the results came back with a DNA match strong enough to remove almost all doubt. One of our parents, likely her father, was also my biological parent. The world didn't crash or explode, it just shifted, quietly, irreversibly. I didn't sleep much after that. I realized I loved my wife no differently than before. She was still the person who helped me rebuild myself when I didn't realize I needed rebuilding. She was still the mother of our children, the woman who held my hand through storms and never let go. The truth of our origins didn't rewrite the life we had built. It only cast a strange, painful shadow over it. What mattered most was simple. She needed me, and I wouldn't fail her. So I made my decision. I would donate my kidney, I would save her life. And only after she was safe, strong, healed, only then would I tell her the truth that had cracked my world open. I knew it might destroy everything, but I also knew she deserved the truth from the man who promised to stand beside her, no matter what storms came our way. And I wasn't going anywhere. In the days leading up to the surgery, my life became a blur of hospital corridors, late-night anxieties, and a determination so fierce it felt carved into bone. My wife grew paler, weaker, but more hopeful. That was the part that both steadied and shattered me. I'd watch her sit quietly on the couch, her fingers tracing the outline of our daughter's drawings taped to the wall, and I'd feel the secret lodged in my chest like a shard of glass, silent, unmoving, impossible to ignore. My parents flew in a few days before the operation. Their presence steadied me more than I expected. My mom held my shoulders a little longer than usual. My dad made jokes he barely managed to finish with a steady voice. They didn't say it, but I knew they were preparing for the possibility of losing me. That knowledge, along with the 6-page letter I'd written to my wife in shaky, cramped handwriting, made the entire world feel unbearably fragile. That letter was the hardest thing I have ever written. I poured every truth I had into it. How she was the center of my world. How the life we'd built was the greatest miracle I'd ever known. How the discovery of our connection felt like a violent twist of fate, something we never could have known, but had to face now. I apologize for keeping it from her, for choosing to wait until she was safe because I couldn't risk shattering her before she even had a chance to fight for her life. I folded it, sealed it, and gave it to my parents with instructions only for the unthinkable. If something happened to me, she needed to know everything. And she needed to hear that my love for her existed far beyond the strange and painful truth that bound us. The morning of the surgery came quietly. No dramatic music, no forewarning, just dawn creeping gently across the sky as if unaware of the fear threading through my veins. At the hospital, everything became systematic. Questions, signatures, IV lines, monitors. My wife smiled at me through the exhaustion. Her eyes were soft, grateful, achingly familiar. "If this works," she whispered, "I'm going to chase the kids around the house again. You better be ready." I tried to joke back, but my throat tightened. I kissed her forehead and promised her a future I prayed we'd both live to see. The surgery wasn't the dramatic ordeal I imagined. It was a quiet surrender to anesthesia, a slow fade into darkness. When I woke, everything was a blur of pain, lights, and distant voices. I remember the burning in my side, the dryness in my throat, and the disorienting fog of consciousness. I blinked, and through the haze noticed one absurd detail. The doctors had covered one of my eyes with an eye patch because I'd scratched it while unconscious. The first time my wife saw me, she laughed. A real laugh, light and unrestrained. "The doctors did remember we're here for your kidney, right?" she teased. I tried to smile, but it came out more like a wince. The pain was sharp, constant, but beneath it all was relief. The transplant had gone well. Her body was already responding. It was working. Recovery was humbling. She handled it with grace, patience, quiet strength. I, on the other hand, handled it like an absolute idiot. I ignored the doctor's instructions, tried to move too much, walked when I should have rested. I hated feeling helpless. I hated watching my wife recover faster than I did. And I paid the price. The damage I caused forced me into a second procedure. A painful reminder that stubbornness doesn't make you strong. It makes you reckless. Once I was stable again, our recovery became a strange, shared journey. We stayed home, resting in separate discomforts but moving slowly toward normalcy. My wife spent her downtime scrolling through TikTok and Reddit, something I should have anticipated but didn't. It didn't take long for a certain post to surface on her screen. My post. Even with the details changed, even with the names and locations blurred, she recognized it. Recognized the timing, the circumstances, the shape of the story. My story. She didn't confront me at first. That's not her way. Instead, she asked questions, gentle ones, questions about my adoption, about what my parents knew, about the early parts of my life I'd never cared to examine. My parents were still visiting when the questions began, so they answered what they could. My wife said she wanted the information for a family memory book, something to give our kids when they were older. It was a perfect excuse, believable and innocent, but I recognized the subtle shift in her eyes. She knew something, and she was waiting for the moment I chose honesty over fear. A few days later, we visited her parents. Sitting in their living room felt different now, like I was watching shadows instead of people, looking for pieces that connected in ways I never saw before. We talked about childhood stories, old photographs, her father's teenage years. He told us about his first relationship, a girl he had cared deeply for before life pulled them in separate directions. When he showed us her picture, something inside me stilled. I recognized myself in her face. Not a full mirror image, just echoes, enough to know. But then her mother chimed in with her version of events, reshaping the story with the confidence of someone correcting a harmless exaggeration. The way she told it felt more believable, less romanticized, and yet none of it changed the truth already unraveling in my mind. After that visit, the guilt grew unbearable. My wife was stronger now, healthier than she'd been in years. I had no excuse left. I couldn't hide behind fear or medical urgency anymore. She deserved the truth, even if it tore our world apart. One night she found me pacing the hallway, unable to quiet my thoughts. She touched my arm and asked if I was okay. Something in her voice, soft, steady, knowing, broke the last of my defenses. "I need to tell you something," I said. "Something serious. Something that could change everything." She frowned gently. "That's a terrible way to start. Want to try again?" I swallowed hard, went to the drawer and pulled out the letter. The same one I had written before the surgery. The one I never wanted her to read unless I couldn't speak for myself. Her eyes followed every word. I watched her expressions shift like passing weather. Curiosity, understanding, pain, then a deep, unreadable concentration. When she finally looked up at me, my entire world felt suspended by a thread. She walked toward me, placed her hands on my chest, and told me to stop pacing. Then she looked directly into my eyes and smiled, genuinely, warmly, impossibly. "You," she said, "are the dumbest smart person I know." And then she kissed me. The relief that hit me was so strong I felt weak. We talked for hours after that, She told me she'd already suspected the truth because of the post she found. She'd waited for me to tell her, hoping I'd choose honesty instead of fear. She said it didn't change who we were. We hadn't grown up together. We hadn't known. Our life wasn't built on a lie. It was built on love, on chance, on two people who collided in a moment neither could have predicted. She told me she wasn't leaving. She told me I was her husband before anything else. She told me she still wanted the life we promised each other. And in her eyes, I saw something stronger than the truth that had haunted me. Forgiveness, understanding, choice. We decided not to tell anyone. Not yet, maybe not ever. Our kids will learn about their genetics when they're older, when the time is right. But the rest of the world doesn't need to know the complexities we never asked for. In the months that followed, life didn't return to normal. It became something better. My wife recovered beautifully. She chased our kids the way she promised. She laughed more. She lived more. And I felt us growing closer than we had been in years. One night, under the same soft glow of the kitchen light, where we'd shared so many quiet moments, I asked her to marry me again. She paused long enough for my heart to stumble, then smiled and said yes. We rebuilt our vows not because we needed to, but because we wanted to. Because even after the truth, after the fear, after the darkness, we chose each other again. And this time we did so fully knowing the strange, painful, extraordinary truth of who we are. I don't know how the world would judge us if they knew, but it doesn't matter. We are a family. We are whole. We survived the truth. And somehow, impossibly, we are stronger for it.